Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, as always, along with my good friends Greg Matusak.
Hey, Kevin. I'm not saying I'm a better American than you, but I just got my booster shot. So I'm not saying I'm a better American than you, but having a vaccine, many people would say I'm a better American than you. And okay, I guess I am a better American than you.
You are, because my booster is already 3 months old. I'm not even sure it works anymore. And Ward Anderson is here. Hold for applause.
The Macaulay Culkin of the More Perfect Union podcast. It is wonderful to be here as I sit home alone.
And we haven't been on the air. Well, of course, we're not on the air. We're on some streaming thing. But we haven't done a podcast in a couple of weeks, maybe more than that. And
you're right. 2 weeks.
It's only 2 weeks? Okay. It's good to be back with you guys. I miss you. I miss our little chats. Anything new in your lives?
The biggest thing, of course, is the booster.
Yeah.
The booster and the flu shot. And of course, you beat me to it as usual. It did. I'm glad I got it on the weekend. It did knock me out for all weekend. I found myself watching samurai movies in a fever. I'm pretty sure I'm fluent in Japanese at this point.
And Ward, other than what you texted me about the other day, which we won't go into on this podcast, how is your life?
Everything is nice here. It is my favorite time of the year. I am, of course, a big Christmas buff. Here in Canada, we already had Thanksgiving in October. And my daughters visited me this weekend, and we put up the tree, as the guys can see is behind me in the video that they can see me on.
Very nice. That was a beautiful tree.
Nice.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, I have an alter ego, kind of known as the Christmas guy. And every holiday season, I make appearances on morning radio and television and the news and stuff, talking about the history of Christmas and odd trivia and tips and things like that, trivia facts and stuff like that about Christmas. And I'll be doing a lot of that. And hopefully you guys will be able to check that out when I post them. I'll post them in the group online.
Yeah, after this holiday,
I hope so.
When we do our shows in December, let's definitely let's talk about that, because Ward is truly an encyclopedia of facts about Christmas.
He's a font of knowledge.
Yes.
And funny
Do
funny
people
enough,
still say that? Yeah.
a font. I like that. Funny enough, everyone who regular listeners to the show know that there is a movie that I co-wrote is currently in production in the States, right? And it is a thriller. It is a thriller movie. But the production company in charge of making the movie, because like I said, I wrote it, they have informed me that they've decided to set the movie at Christmas time. So when they told me that, they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think everyone's going to think that I wrote it this way, and I didn't." It'll be nice to argue for a change about whether or not my own movie is a Christmas movie and not just Die Hard.
We're going to get into the news in a moment. I just want to tell listeners, I asked people to post some new reviews of our show, since the three of us have been hosting it together now for half a year or longer. And I still see people posting reviews where they're talking about the old cast. So a lot of people keep asking what happened to this person or that person. We're going to address that at the end of the show. Not in great detail, but a little bit more specificity than we've gone into it before. But we'll leave that to the end of the show. So if you're interested in that, please stick around. Kyle Rittenhouse. Boy, there's a guy whose life changed quite a bit this week. Greg, what's your take on the whole thing? I'll chime in with mine after you guys have your chance.
This could take a while. Do you guys have the time? First of all, when I heard the verdict, my stomach dropped, and I caught myself, and I was like, "Why?" We all kind of knew this was coming. I have a friend who's a former judge. He does some broadcasting and commentary on some legal shows, and he told me, and he's black, and he even said this is probably how it's going to work out. The defense had they framed it well. And a lot of people said the judge was definitely biased. I'm not going to make those accusations, but it probably was. We saw nothing surprising. Sure. But for me, it's the true sickening immorality of the situation, where someone would claim they were going to go protect or be even emergency medical aid while carrying an AR-15 pointed at someone, and when that person was agitated, then shoot them. And here is where it's really disturbing to me is we had someone shoot someone, become an active shooter, and then he fled for his life. And then when other people, he felt like he was a victim and like people are attacking me. Well, they were, because you were an active shooter. If someone went into a school, shot someone, and then said, why are people attacking me? Very similar.
And Ward, I'm going to throw to you in a second. I just want to comment on that. Ward, actually, you brought up the active shooter point early in the trial. I thought it was a great point, and I know that you're going to have more to say on that. I just want to make one comment on it now. It really was something that Ward flagged early on, and I adopted that metaphor. And then the prosecution adopted it because everybody listens to Ward Anderson. But, you know, a lot has been made about the reasonable person standard in the trial. And, of course, in Wisconsin and in many states, they have this very vague definition of what a reasonable person would do in any given situation. And the jury has to assume that if a reasonable person would, in this case, have shot 3 people, then they're not guilty of the crime, okay? What either the law doesn't allow or the jury didn't think about, and frankly, I wish the prosecutors had made this point, it's also fair to think of what a reasonable person would think when they saw him shoot the first person. And that was, hey, this guy is on a shooting rampage. He did not stop and give up his gun. You know, if you shoot somebody in self-defense, okay, but you don't leave the scene with your gun. That is not part of a self-defense argument. And when he left that scene, reasonable people felt that he was fleeing a crime scene. And I think they had just as much right to pursue this person and try to subdue him as he had a right to shoot people. Frankly, I think they had more of a right. Ward, I'm going to throw to you.
Just to add to that, they also had a right to fear for their lives. There's no reason to assume that just because this is, a little white teenager, that he's safe. When people talk about, but he was running, I understand that argument. I'm not going to just dismiss that and go, but he caused this, we know, or, he provoked or whatever. I won't even get into that. I will get into it where the video begins, which is what everybody is trying to do. Everyone wants to start with, look at that video, look at that video, look at that video. And I say that video shows the middle of the night. Near the end of it, it does not show everything that happened leading up to it. And for anyone to argue that, nope, nothing happened significant at all before this other than him being chased is being disingenuous. Because these things don't just happen instantly and lead to death and violence just instantly like that. There is provocation, there is interaction. When someone sees a kid like that shoot someone and then run, or even not necessarily, even before he'd shot the first person, you see someone with an AR-15 running down the street, there's no reason to think your first impression is that they're running for their safety. It makes total sense. You'd think they're running to get a better shot. This idea that an active shooter is someone standing in place and just spraying bullets everywhere just isn't true. Plenty of active shooters have stalked and run and stalked and run and stopped and shot again. So whether or not you think it's self-defense, I'm not going to argue because that's been decided by the jury. But what I will argue is you have to see why the people on the ground would have seen an active shooter. And instead of people recognizing that, I got to hear about how the victims deserved it because of what we've heard about them supposedly as people, much of which isn't even true.
Can we talk for a moment about the actual police at that moment who felt that it was okay? A lot of them were, by the testimony of Kyle Rittenhouse and the other people who were there, were like, oh, thanks a lot, guys, for showing up. Thanks for...
That's on the video. They said, we really appreciate you guys being here. The cops said that to them.
Which is amazing. That they would be fine with people who they had no idea who these people were, just coming in to a volatile situation with guns, AR-15s, and like engaging a group with as far as they know, no training.
Yeah, their response should have been, please put your guns down and go home. That is what the police should be saying.
Right. We are the professionals. We know what we're doing. We're going to try to de-escalate the situation. Or if we are going to engage, we're going to do it properly so no one gets hurt. I mean, the thought that a police officer was like, oh, great. Now there's, 100 guns here against them. That's ludicrous.
Regular listeners of the show know, like Greg and Kevin do, that I have been indirectly involved, pretty much directly. I've been in an active shooter situation. 20 years ago, I left a party moments before someone came in and shot everybody. This was a 19-year-old kid who did this. Okay? And I have to say, I've heard a lot of people say things like, this was just some little kid with a gun. This was just some teenager. Do you think really people were really afraid of him? Yeah. I think that a teenager with a gun is fucking terrifying. Okay? Because I've seen teenagers with guns easily and quickly kill people. All right? This whole thing with Rittenhouse took less than 3 minutes. Okay? This took seconds for all of this to go down. And the thing I just want to say about it is, I don't sympathize with Rittenhouse, but I recognize him because he's exactly like the kid that shot up that party all those years ago. He's exactly like that kid. Directionless, angry, awkward to others, has had all kinds of problems in his life, all these things. There is so much at play here, and it goes back to the fact America has a real problem when it comes to its gun culture and when it comes to the mental health of those who feel they have to have them and that they need to use them and that they want to use them and have people see them use them. I don't care how much you want to talk about self-defense. There's a real problem with this, and that needs to be worked on. Unfortunately, it won't be because the pro-gun lobby won this argument years ago.
My big fear is that at the next protest, the next Black Lives Matters protest, the next Women's March, the next big protest, people are going to go out as anti-protest with the guns. We're going to see the Proud Boys, except instead of their usual, 20 group mob, they're going to go out in single numbers. And then when they say, I felt threatened, that's when the shooting's going to start. That's going to be their news. And the freedom to protest, the First Amendment is going to be trumped by the Second Amendment. And yes, I did that on purpose.
Okay, so let's move on. At the same time, I mentioned this in a post on Facebook. For 6 months, the news media, cable news, has covered the Democrats struggling to pass the Build Back Better bill 24/7. Every hour they were blasting the Democrats for not getting this bill passed in Congress. Finally, on Friday morning, it got passed. They covered it for 90 minutes, and then the Rittenhouse jury came back, and it was forgotten. That's just about cable news and how they operate. But go ahead.
Well, the good news, it now heads to the Senate.
That's the good news.
That's the good news. So now it stays in the zeitgeist. So if there's any major changes, or if there's any changes, it'll go back.
Now, I don't think any of the three of us were particular Bernie Sanders supporters. We admire him, but we didn't think that he was the right pick for the Democratic Party to be the presidential nominee, if I may speak for the three of us.
I can say I like him very, very much. I also know that most of America doesn't share my liberal views.
Okay. But I wanted to ask you, do you think that he's helping or hurting the situation now? You know, we know that Manchin and Sinema are going to probably try to pare back what was passed in the House. Sanders is still trying to make it a stronger bill and add more things that they're going to protest over. So I guess I'm asking a leading question. I think Bernie Sanders is now a negative force in getting things done in this particular Congress with this particular bill. AOC and the squad too. They're asking too much. They're making a bad situation 10 times worse. And frankly, they're jeopardizing the entire Biden agenda and the Biden presidency.
To say that they're jeopardizing, they jeopardized a lot of things. But it's important to hear from that side, the progressive side. We need them. We need them just as much as we need Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. It's important that we remember all the voices in the Democratic Party. But they also have to say, this isn't happening this year. It's not. But this is where we want to be.
But they don't do that. They insist that it's going to happen, and they make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get the legislation through.
Yeah, I will concede on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's turn to the Republicans for a minute. Kevin McCarthy, as everyone knows, made an 8-hour speech on the floor of the House overnight trying to delay this vote, which of course accomplished nothing. But I want to speak to what I think is going on there. As you probably know, it's public knowledge that McCarthy had met that morning in Mar-a-Lago with Trump. And, I think we all know that Trump is leaning towards, or if he has not already decided, that he's going to run again in 2024. I think he dangled the vice presidency in front of Kevin McCarthy, and I think that's what McCarthy was auditioning for on Thursday night. I don't think it was about trying to delay this bill or make them vote in the middle of the night. I think Kevin McCarthy is trying to show Donald Trump that he's a fighter. Now, anybody who's a political wonk is going to say to me, Kevin, you don't know what you're talking about. Trump is never going to pick a vice presidential nominee from California because he has no chance of carrying that state. So why would he waste that? The answer is politics is changing in the era of Trump. And it's now not about who might be able to help Trump carry a purple state. It's about the fact that Kevin McCarthy is very likely to be the next Speaker of the House because the Republicans are probably going to take control of the House in 2022. That means that Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker of the House when the Electoral College votes are tabulated in Congress in January of 2025. Imagine if Kevin McCarthy had been the Speaker in January 6th of 2021. Imagine how that day might have gone differently. And I think Trump is trying to figure out how to put in place the key people who could move the key levers to make sure that even if he doesn't win the popular vote or the Electoral College vote, he has a chance at still becoming president. What do you guys think of that theory?
The first part I agree with. I think very rarely does it mean anything to have a vice president about getting the votes from that state. And I don't think you're right. He's not going to get California, but Kevin McCarthy does have that nationwide appeal. He is known nationwide because of his position, his current position. However, the Republicans have been changing, like in different states, in Arizona and in Georgia, how their votes are working. And I will say this, there is no way that will ever happen. And there's no Supreme Court that will ever let that happen where if like whether it be Mike Pence or McCarthy, who will say, oh, well, I'm looking at this and the other guy won 3 states, but I've decided not to accept it.
Well, Greg,
so,
let me play devil's advocate. What
sure.
if, let's say it comes down to Georgia, okay?
Sure.
And what if the Georgia and let's say Biden runs, which I think he's going to, and he again wins it by the narrowest of margins.
Sure.
But this time, the Republican legislature of Georgia sends a second slate of electoral college nominees. They send two slates, the one that the Secretary of State certifies, and then the legislature says, no, we think Trump won, we're sending our own slate. Having Kevin McCarthy in the House as Speaker, he can make the decision, or his caucus can make the decision as to which of those slates to recognize. Now, the argument that goes to the Supreme Court is not who won the election, but does Congress have the right to determine which slate of electors they are going to recognize? That's a very different constitutional question, and you don't want to be arguing the other side of that.
But even still, if it's that close, it'll go down to a recount. And even if they send different congressional people, they can't say slates. They can't say, well, even though these numbers are correct, we've decided to put our own numbers in. We've changed our mind.
Recounts can be stopped. We've already seen that.
Right. We can.
You're
and
missing
you're right.
the point, guys. This has been known. This was known in 2020. I'm not saying you guys, because Ward, you haven't weighed in on this. But Greg, I think you're missing the point. A legislature of a state can determine that they want to send whatever slate of electors they want to send to the House gets sent. And there were concerns that one or more states would send competing slates and that the House would have to decide which one to recognize. Those concerns were valid in 2020, and they will be valid in 2024 and 2025.
Then there will be a lawsuit.
Yes,
they will freak out.
We're going in circles, but I'm telling you that the lawsuit then will be, well, Congress deemed that slate of electors the one that they wanted to recognize. The question is, can the Supreme Court overturn Congress's decision then? And smart people will argue both sides of that.
All right, let me ask you one question. Has any slate ever disregarded the election process and just named their own people?
Individual electoral college delegates have, yes.
They have?
Yes.
Okay, but it hasn't made a difference as far as the entire thing?
No.
No.
But we're talking about two different things here, not rogue delegates. We're talking about a state submits two different slates, and the House of Representatives, probably with the Senate, has to determine which slate of delegates to recognize.
And right, but then once again, they would then go rogue and submit their own people, not following
Yes.
Right, but has that ever happened before?
There was talk about it in 2021. We're going in circles.
I know,
yes.
But it's never happened where an entire state...
January 6th never happened before, Greg.
Right.
But
I'm telling
Kevin's point is they could do it, and they actually have laws that protect them doing it. That's the issue.
That is political theory. And trust me, it would get knocked down by every... Okay. That's literally against every... Trust me, it wouldn't get 10 feet.
Okay. On January 10th, 2025, I'm going to remind you of this conversation.
Please, I think we've got it on tape somewhere.
I want to move on, but I just want to acknowledge that while we were chatting, Greg sent me a link to an article that appears in something called Lawfare Blog, written by Lawrence Lessig, who is a well-known legal scholar, who concurs with Greg's point of view that it's never going to happen that a second slate of electors is going to be acknowledged by the House of Representatives. And all I can say is, let's wait and see what happens in 2025.
Lawrence Lessig, he's my guy.
There you go. What do you want to talk about, Greg?
You know what? I like. I've been watching a lot of anime, so the Paul Gosar thing is pretty funny.
Let's
and then
talk
horrifying. But also the QAnon shaman is pretty funny too. Paul Gosar this week was censured by at least half of the House
of Representatives.
House of Representatives, for putting up a cartoon where he is seen decapitating AOC and then about to stab our president, Biden. The best part is it shows Paul Gosar, who probably is winded, stepping up, one step, flying over rooftops. If you've ever seen the anime Attack on Titan, this is where it's taken from. And all these naked titans with are the Democrats, Biden and AOC and Pelosi, and it's terribly edited. And it's funny because at that point they were like, the Republicans were like, I don't see anything wrong with this. It's just a harmless cartoon. Yeah, sure. He was chopping off their heads and there's a lot of blood, but come on. Where's your sense of humor?
Interestingly, these are the people who said video games are creating real life violence in our culture. But then when they show a cartoon or an anime that's showing horrible violence, they say, it's just entertainment.
Right. These are the same ones who, when Kathy Griffin had an obvious plastic head of Donald Trump. I mean, this was an obvious fake, and they were like, you can't do that, and they clutched their pearls, and they were like, cancel her quick. But for something like this, they were like, he's just this guy who likes anime and manga and tentacle porn.
He's decapitating AOC in a cartoon. Have a sense of humor.
The part that really upset me was during the event or whatever. Representative Gosar was like, fine, if you're going to do this, but put me down along with Alexander Hamilton. He was the first one to be censored. So him and I are just alike. And I was thinking, no, you're not just alike, because he did it for something he probably believed in, probably standing up to someone who said something asinine, or, calling Thomas Jefferson a dick for owning slaves, but you're just a jerk.
Yeah. And you don't have to go back that far. When George W. Bush was president, somebody produced a movie, Ward, I'm sure you'll remember this, where they simulated the assassination of then President Bush, and the Republicans went ape crap over it.
Oh, yeah.
And now they show this cartoon of him, of a Republican congressman trying to stabbing at the President of the United States with a saber, and they're going, what's the problem?
Yeah,
well, this was also, that was called Death of a President, that movie. And also, the thing that I'm reminded of here is that...
Ward remembers it because it was a Christmas movie.
It was on Hallmark.
That was genuinely excellent. It genuinely caught me off guard. I loved it. Okay, but I'm reminded of in 2011 when Gabby Giffords was shot. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then again, when Sarah Palin was running for office, we had in 2011 with Gabby Giffords, and then again in 2012 or whatever, leading up to, I'm sorry, when was Sarah Palin?
2008.
2008. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. But I'm saying, then and then after Gabby Giffords, and then since, we've had this talk every so often about violent rhetoric from our politicians and violent rhetoric amongst politicians. And we always talk about cutting down on it and everything like that. We talked about it after the softball game shoot up with the active shooter who shot at the Republicans. We've talked about
Representative Steve Scalise.
Yes.
Right.
Steve Scalise, yes.
And Gabby Giffords, like I said, and all these things, okay? And I don't think people understand, or they keep forgetting or not realizing, this kind of talk does influence people. It does create this culture of violence, and it helps to ferment it and keep it going. And my fear, said earlier, I don't like cynicism. I don't. My fear is, and it will not be left-wing, and you can argue with me all you want, but my fear is there will be a homegrown right-wing terrorist attack in America within the next 4 years, right? And it will be devastating. And
you mean another one?
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it will be devastating because I think it will be large. But on top of that, I fear that it will be one that for once or for a change, you'll see America divide over, with some people, instead of calling an act of terrorism, defending it. Because we already saw this with just people being angry and storming the Capitol, right? But some of those people were armed and ready to actually do things, to actually hurt or possibly kill people, okay? And I have a fear that there's going to be another such event, and it's going to be far more successful and brutal, and you're going to watch America divide over it. And that goes back to that tribalism we were talking about. And the violent rhetoric absolutely adds to it and makes it festers and it encourages it. It's a
I
bad
totally
thing.
agree. I couldn't agree more.
I mean, when the Oklahoma bombing, Timothy McVeigh was obviously, he was homegrown, he was an American, but all Americans kind of, said, "Oh, this is terrible." I mean,
it's a bridge too far. Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy talk. You shouldn't do that. But I would hate to see something like that happen again, and I also would hate to see the reactions. And I would even be on Reddit for like years afterwards.
To complete the circle, going back to the beginning of the show, we've already seen it with one person. One person went on a violent rampage and was acquitted of it. So all you're really saying is take that and multiply it by 100 or 1,000, right?
Yeah, I do. I really do think that, because I really don't think it seems that we see violence escalating and happening and getting worse. And I'm still watching people going, nah, that wouldn't happen here. Yeah. And it's constantly happening.
Okay. To end on a lighter note, I wanted to ask you guys about what I'm calling the survey pandemic in this country. Are you like me? Are you constantly getting emails and texts after you have an interaction with a vendor, a business, you utilized a website? Do you find that within 10 minutes, you're getting an email or a text asking you to take a survey about how well they did?
Yes.
What is it with this country where now everything has to be graded? Every little interaction you have with the most obscure company that you didn't want to talk to in the first place, but they screwed up your food order or they screwed up, your airline reservation, you now have to grade them and grade the person you talk to. What is that?
It has to do a lot with accountability. So a lot of corporations and a lot of companies, the employees say, "Well, we want to get paid more," and the companies will say something like, "Well, what do you do to justify getting paid more? You don't do that much." And they say, "Oh, we do all these things," and they list all the things they do. Well, how do we know you're actually doing these things, and how do we know you're doing them well? Well, you could have your managers do your job, and they go, "Oh, that sounds like a pain." So one of the big things they do is they say, "Why don't we just install software? And if your numbers go up as far as customer satisfaction, then we know you're doing a good job, and thus you earn." So a lot of times I've seen companies, I know people in companies, if their survey numbers do really well, then on their evaluations, they get higher. I work in a company that we do have a website, and I've been called by my boss, "Hey, someone just said you did a great job." And my response is, "You guys know I'm doing a good job. Why do you do this to me? I don't need that." But,
Ward, do you see it as much in Canada? I mean, I know a lot of it is on the web, which is, of course, knows no borders. But is this just an American thing, or is this all over?
I'm not completely following. You mean that after you've had the service, they won't stop hounding you for input?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I get it all the time. And the worst is just opening an app I got like the day before.
Yeah.
And they're like, "How you like it?" And you're like, all right, calm down. Don't be so thirsty here, okay?
That's my point.
Yeah.
I find it very annoying.
Yeah, I do too. I actually appreciate wanting the feedback, right? I really do. But at the same time, I don't know. But I also not question, but since they all do it and it doesn't seem anything ever changes, I don't know how much it works. Right.
I mean, I got to say, Greg, I love your optimism and your positive outlook on life. But Thanks. I think I'm not convinced that companies are. I do think that yes, that some of this might seep into employee evaluations, but I don't think companies are doing this to give their employees bonuses. I think they're doing it for their own less than positive reasons.
I bought a car a couple of years ago, and the first thing they said is I bought the car, and the guy said. The guy, I knew I probably shouldn't have bought the car because he said, everyone calls me Captain. And Captain said, hey, you're going to get an email soon asking for feedback. Do me a favor. Take care of that. And I was like, sure. And I walked out and I was thinking, I'm not doing that. 2 weeks later, I've been ignoring this email, work stuff. I get a call from Captain. Hey, Greg, just checking in on that car. Awesome. You like it? Love it. Good. I noticed you didn't send back that email. Must have been sent to my spam. It was not. I lied to the captain. Hey, send that in for me. Okay, I'll resend it to you. I had the
same experience. Same experience, except I didn't lie about the spam.
I did, and then so he sent it again. 2 weeks later, he's like, hey, I didn't get it. I was like, what? And I was like, I'll do it right now. So I finally sent it. I did the very minimum. I went beep, boop, boop, boop. No comments, no things. And I don't think the next time I went in for something, he was not very helpful, which really kind of ticked me off. So,
well, one of the reasons that I brought this up is I actually fell into this same trap myself a couple of weeks ago. When you guys will remember, I asked our listeners to go back to iTunes and leave a review of the new More Perfect Union, the one that the three of us have been doing with some occasional guest hosts over the last 6 months, because a lot of our reviews are from previous versions of the show that had previous co-hosts on it. And people are still reviewing us and referring to hosts who haven't been on the show in 6 months or longer. These reviews, and I'm sure these people are sincere, they really liked some version of the show in the past, and they keep saying, what happened to this person, or why isn't that person on the show anymore, and you should bring them back. And I want to assure our listeners who care about this that if someone was on this podcast and they are no longer on the podcast, it is either because they felt that they had put in their time, their lives were busy with other projects, and they voluntarily decided that it was time for them to move on, which happens in every form of ongoing entertainment, whether it's a television show, a radio show, a TV series. People move on because nobody wants to do something forever. We've been doing this now for almost over 6 years, frankly.
Over 6 years.
Yes. 329 episodes, including this one. Some people left because the producers, of which that's now basically Greg and myself, Ward also helps us, made an evaluation that a certain person, we liked them as individuals, but we didn't think that they were clicking with the show, or that their particular way of expressing themselves jived with how we wanted to present ideas on the show. But again, they left, no hard feelings. We like to think that we're still friendly with them. And then there was at least, and by the way, I should say we've had 11, I counted them today, Greg. There's been 11 of us who've been regular co-hosts of the series, not counting people who've come in for 2 or 3 episodes. Yes, 11.
That's amazing.
We don't have to list them all. They're all
no.
They're all terrific people, and we genuinely like them
all.
All
have been married
people.
to Elizabeth Taylor.
And all of them were, at one point or another, married to Elizabeth Taylor. There was a problem with one person. We're not going to say who that person is, and we're not going to say what the problem is. But there was a legitimate problem with one individual, And if you happen to be a fan of that individual, I'm sorry, but sometimes people may have wonderful talents, may be very informative, very funny, may have a wonderful voice, may seem to click, but you don't hear the unedited versions of these shows. And there have been times when people have said things and done things that we had to edit out because we didn't feel they were appropriate. And in one case, a person was warned of their particular behavioral patterns, and they continued. But anyways, if you want more details, there is a new post on the More Perfect Union website, mpupodcast.com. You can go to our blog and read about it there. And it sheds just a little bit more light without getting into anything that would be litigious or defaming. But I just want to assure people, if you like somebody, great. That person can go create their own podcast. They're no longer here. Please evaluate us for the podcast we're doing. If it's not your taste, that's fine. Not every podcast is for everyone. I'm sure there's millions of people that don't like Ben Shapiro's podcast, and there's millions of people that don't like Pod Save America, and there's millions of people that don't like every podcast. We get together each week and try to entertain ourselves. We like chatting. We have a lot of friends who enjoy hearing this. We have a solid base of listeners across the country who enjoy hearing it. We love doing it for you. If it's not your cup of tea, fine. If it is, please go leave a review on iTunes about the current show because we think we're putting out a nice product. We're proud of it, and we'd like other people who are checking us out to know that we do appeal to some listeners. Greg, Ward, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you said it all.
No, I enjoy being here, and I enjoy all the listeners, and I'm happy to hear that people tune in and listen. And many people message me and tell me that they enjoy listening to me on the show, and no one who doesn't messages me, and I'm fine with that.
And by the way, if anybody wants more information, send us an email at mpupodcast@gmail.com. That's mpupodcast@gmail.com. And I will be glad to individually have a dialogue with you about what it is that you like about the show, what it is that you're missing, and I'll see if we can resolve these things. And then, of course, you'll have to take a survey and tell us what you think of the show. So with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. We ran a little longer than we anticipated. If you like what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And please don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline so new fans can discover us as well. And with that, Ward, what are your Thanksgiving plans?
Well, I'm going to be here in Canada, so it'll be Thursday.
That's right. What are your Thursday plans?
Yeah. I'm working on an animated project, and that will be my day.
For Paul Gosar, that's right. And Greg, what about you?
I'm taking I've got Thanksgiving. I'm going to try not to say anything because it's family Thanksgiving. But in addition to that, I'm taking pictures of all the food, and I'm sending them to the QAnon shaman, who is now in jail and has to eat prison food. So that's going to be that's one of my new things that I'm doing. I'm sort of like, is that what you're eating now? This is what we're having.
So we encourage everybody to do that. Take pictures of your Thanksgiving food and send it to people convicted and in prison for the January 6th riots.
Oh, that would be the dream. That would be the dream. I'm going to be like, look, real silverware. It's metal. Look, not plastic.
Sharp stuff, sharp.
Sharp stuff. Look, it's a wine glass. Stuff like that. So.